Last week, we covered all of the best agents on Valorant's newest map, Pearl. And in the past, we've gone through each Valorant role and talked about which agents in each class are best on every given map. But today, we're going to go through each agent individually and assign a best map or most optimal map for each and every single agent. Without further ado, let's get right into it. We'll be going through all the agents in alphabetical order, meaning we're starting off here with ASTRA. ASTRA's a bit of a tricky pick because back in the day, you could pick ASTRA on any map and it was probably the best pick for smokes. But after the ASTRA nerf that happened a few months back, ASTRA isn't quite as overpowered as she once was. Currently, the most optimal map for ASTRA is either Ascent or Haven. I think there's an argument that you could play Omen on both of these maps, but because both of these maps are on the larger side and obviously they aren't Viper maps, having ASTRA's universal smokes is really beneficial over Brimstone and of course, like we just said, Omen. On Haven, for example, it makes it really easy for ASTRA to anchor C and still support her team on A with smokes and her gravity well. And as for Ascent, a lot of the choke points on this map are very, very narrow as it's already one of the most CT-sided maps in the game. Combine that with very useful smokes and as I said before, the gravity well, and ASTRA is still really, really strong on this map. Moving over to Breach, this is an obvious choice here. Fracture is the best map to play Breach on. This is the only map in all of pro play where Breach has a 100% pick rate, and there's not a single other map in the game where that can be said for Breach otherwise. Breach's stun is just too useful here to take control of different parts of the map. As far as Brimstone goes, this is obviously the most simple controller in all of Valorant. For people that don't play smokes much, Brimstone's a really easy agent to fill, where your job is to simply throw down smokes for your team and not worry about too much else. But with that being said, there are certain maps where Brimstone is way more optimal than any other controller, and those two maps are Bind and Fracture. What makes Brimstone so good on Fracture are for those moments where you need to smoke 3 different choke points. For example, if your team is entirely funneling out of A main, you can use one smoke toward drop, one toward CT spawn, and then another toward the rope side in heaven. And as far as Bind goes, Brim's ultimate ability has so much value here because of all the different type choke points on the map. Not only that, but Brimstone's smokes last longer than any other controller in the game, and that makes it really difficult to retake Bind, especially on a site like B. As we move over to Chamber, this agent is OP. So that means this agent is optimal on every single map, and that's it. As far as CYPHER goes, this is an agent that has definitely fallen out of the current Valorant meta. However, with the release of the newest map, Pearl, I think CYPHER is more than viable here because of the fact that there are so many ratty corners on this map. When Chamber got nerfed a few months ago to remove one of his trips, the one advantage to CYPHER over every other Sentinel is that he still has 2 tripwires. And on a map where there are so many ratty corners, having more information is never a bad thing. So for those reasons, Pearl is CYPHER's best map. As we move over to Fade, this is another one of those agents where she's truly viable on almost every map in Valorant. However, I do think there are 2 maps where she excels more than any other map in the game. And those 2 maps are Ascent and Haven. These 2 maps are flooded with different rooftops, and that makes the haunt lineups so unpredictable to read from the opposing team. Both of these maps were once considered SOVA maps, but on both of these maps, SOVA eventually became so predictable with all of the different darts that he could use. And that's where I think Fade excels the most. There are an infinite amount of different rooftop spots to throw this haunt ability and scan the enemies on almost all of every site. Before we move on to our next agent, I just want to remind you guys that over 95% of my viewers in the last 30 days are not subscribed to this channel. So if you're one of those people and you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss when I post a new video. I also stream Tuesday through Saturday on Twitch, and I'm looking to make a push toward Radiant very, very soon. So if you guys ever want to catch some live action, go ahead and drop a follow to the Twitch channel. I'll have a link down in the description below. With that being said though, let's jump back into the video. As we move over to Jett, before the nerf, this was another one of those agents that would be viable or optimal on every single map in the game, just like I said for Chamber. But nowadays, especially in pro play, it's so much more rare to see Jett played than she was prior to the nerf. So regarding the post-nerf Jett, the most optimal map for this agent is easily Breeze. The large map just favors long-range duels, and with Jett always having that escape plan with her dash, it still keeps Jett as the most optimal duelist for this map. Moving on to KO, this is another agent where he has impact on almost every map in Valorant. But if I had to pick 2 that were the most optimal for KO, I would go with Ascent and Breeze. KO is a must pick in pro play on these 2 maps, as his ultimate, knife, and flashes have so much impact on both the attacking and defensive sides. KILLJOY is an agent that has fallen out of the Valorant meta a little bit with the introduction of Chamber and his early success in the game. With that being said, however, Ascent is still KILLJOY's safe haven and her ability to lock down sites on that given map. KILLJOY has always been insane on this map, and unless the sites get reworked, I never see that changing. I also want to add to the fact that I think KILLJOY would be a lot more useful on other maps, especially like Fracture, if it weren't for the fact that a single piece of breach utility could break an entire KJ ult that takes 7 orbs to farm. That will never make sense to me. But anyways, let's move on to the next agent. Regarding Neon, the obvious pick here is Fracture. Neon has quickly become the meta on Fracture as far as pro play goes, and this was introduced by Optic Victor during VCT Champions of last year. Neon's an agent that has way more potential than a lot of people think, but she's very hard to play as she's a super niche pick. Being a niche agent just means it's a character that's really hard to fill. And in order to have success on them, you have to be very specialized in these agents and familiar with them in the first place. As far as Omen goes, I think Omen's personal best map is easily Ascent. Now, I know that earlier in the video, I also said Astra's best map was Ascent, and that might be a little bit conflicting because how can 2 controllers be so good on the same exact map? But ultimately, the pick on this map between Astra and Omen comes down to your playstyle. Because this map isn't too large, Omen can easily smoke any part of the map, and there are some really unique one-ways that can be placed inside of walls here. So for those reasons, Omen's most optimal map is easily Ascent. Covering Phoenix is a little bit interesting because of his recent buffs. This is an agent that had a 0% pick rate in all of pro play and was literally never played in rank. So I definitely think it's going to take some time to get a more accurate representation on Phoenix's best map. But if we take a look to way back in the Valorant meta, Phoenix was most optimal on Haven. Whether that's still true now, I'm not sure because I still think every single one of the 3 flashing initiators, KO, Breach, and Skye, are all better than Phoenix on this map still. We really only have past data to base off of regarding Phoenix. So for those reasons alone, I'm going to stick with Haven as Phoenix's most optimal map. I could also see Phoenix having some success on Fracture just because of the fact that there are 4 ultimate orbs on the map. And since Phoenix's ult is only 6 ult orbs, that could make farming his ultimate really easy. As we move over to RAZE, her best map is Bind. Because the choke points are so tight on this map, her grenade has so much value. And the fact that you can throw her utility through the teleporters and dumping all of her utility toward Hookah to help the teammates on the B side of the map help retain that map control. As we move over to REYNA, please stop playing this agent. No, I'm joking, sort of. In high elo, there is no map where REYNA is more optimal than another duelist or any one of the flashing initiators. I think REYNA is really good if you're in mid or lower elo and you know that you're better than everyone else in that lobby, aka if you're smurfing. But other than that, this agent is not good, and if you're immortal, please stop picking her in my lobbies. I beg. As we move over to Sage, her best map is definitely ICEBOX. What's really interesting about this ICEBOX pick is the fact that people rarely play Sage in ranked anymore ever since they made the map adjustments to ICEBOX just a few months back. Yet in pro play, Sage is still a must pick here, and that's why it confuses me so much as to why people never pick Sage on ICEBOX in ranked. I get that the map changed, but I think Sage is even more needed now in ICEBOX than she was prior to the changes just a few months ago. Her wall just provides so much value to get a safe plant down on that B site and makes retake on both sites so much harder for the defending team. As we move over to SKYE, this is another one of those agents that's absolutely phenomenal on almost every map, especially in rank. But if we base our selection a little bit more off pro play, then the #1 optimal map for SKYE is Bind. Her dog and flashes have so much value here, especially toward the B side of the map, for getting early map control and helping to retain it throughout the round. SOVA was an agent in the past that was viable on almost every single map in the game except for Split and Fracture. But since the recent nerfs to SOVA and of course the introduction to Fade to the game, there are only 2 maps where I still find SOVA the most optimal initiator, and those 2 maps are Breeze and ICEBOX. Both of these maps cater to super long range fights, and that's where SOVA's drone is easily more favorable than Fade's Prowler. Similarly, it's really hard to find value out of Fade's hauntability on these maps because of the lack of different nifty rooftops, and for those reasons, I'd rather have SOVA's Recon than Fade's hauntability. As we move over to Viper, we actually have the same exact 2 map picks that we just had for SOVA, Breeze and ICEBOX. I think everybody in Valorant knows that these are both Viper maps, and while there are other maps where Viper's really useful like Bind or even Fracture, I think those instances are better for Viper in a double controller meta. And in this scenario here, I want to talk about where Viper's most optimal as a solo controller. And again, ICEBOX and Breeze are the obvious choices here. Last but not least, we have Yoru, who similar to Neon is a very niche pick in Valorant. At one point in time, it was pretty much a throw to pick Yoru, but after the recent buffs, I think Yoru is actually a really solid agent. But like I said, he's a niche pick, and you really need to know what you're doing with Yoru in order to make him viable on any given map. With that being said though, Yoru's best map is easily Bind. His ability to play mind games with the opponents, with all of the different things that you can do in the teleporters, whether you want to TP, send a clone, or whatever the trick may be, just leaves Yoru with so much potential on this map. And it's just a shame that this agent is so hard to master because the outplayability really is high. Guys, I just covered all of the best maps for each agent in Valorant, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts on my list? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications so you don't miss another video. And again, don't forget to follow the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/the1ZK, where I stream almost daily, where I've been grinding through the ranks of Immortal almost every single morning. So I look forward to seeing you guys there soon. With that being said, guys, I'll see you all next time. Peace.